I always feel that I'm confident. The one thing that I'll plead guilty to be like, being arrogant about stuff is that there's almost nobody that I meet that I don't think I can help in some way. So that's kind of my mindset. It's like, I can help, connect you to somebody, but it's always like, how are you making these connections? And the first and foremost thing I always say is being curious and asking questions. So much of it start out with, who is it that you want to be in front of? It's a Google search. It's going for a walk. It's driving through a thing. It's going to places and then ask and say, you want to meet them. You need to ask. You need to find out who fits the description of a client for what I do.
You're listening to Stories from the Top, an inside guide to better business development. So we're back with Pete Reinke, the godfather of networking from the Lehigh Valley and the whole Philly area in general, I'd say. So today we're going to dive a little deeper into some of the strategies of how to build a professional network. So just to start out, why don't you quickly introduce yourself for people who may have missed the first episode?
Yeah. So Pete Reinke, right now I'm doing Friends of Pete as my about to be LLC, I think. I'm currently still interviewing for some business development and fundraising jobs, but this is really my heart and my passion. So that's me, been up in Easton for 35 years, closely affiliated with the Lehigh Valley in a lot of people's minds. But again, I grew up in Philadelphia, same house for 27 years. So I always feel Philadelphia, Lehigh Valley, the Philly suburbs are my world. But Central PA, North Jersey, things like that, that's places I know the most. But I'm blessed to have connections around the world, humbly.
Great. So to start out, I want to just jump into, for people who may not be comfortable networking, I'm introverted, it's just not my thing. Yep. How do you encourage people to get past that and get out there? Because it's so important, even if you're in a job where you're not doing sales or anything, just to build a network of people is so powerful and important.
Yeah, it's to me, it's one of the most important things to happen is to go out and meet people. And when I talk to people, which obviously I do all day, every day, the people that I admire the most from a networking perspective are the people that are truly shy and nervous and stuff like that, because they're putting themselves out of their comfort zone initially. The advice that I always have is, you need to go to events. So, and sometimes maybe not go to a huge event first, go to a smaller event. And it's an advice that I give people since they're little. Bring a friend or two, and then go, but don't hover with them. And so that's one of the key things is bring a friend. The other thing is always finding something that fits into your life. And again, it's like something that's close to your office, close to your house or whatever. Start with those. But it goes back, when you ask me that question, man, it goes back to something that I say to people when I talk to college kids about interviewing who are nervous and uncertain. I said, the way to get around that is to go and interview for a job or a company that you have absolutely no interest in. Somebody said, well, why would I do that? It's like, because when you make a mistake, who cares? I don't want to work for you anyway. Mm. And then when they throw in those things, tell me a story, or like the questions where I have so many friends that are in HR, and they used to say most of the time they ask those, questions to catch you. They're not listening to your answer. It's just like, how do you respond? Do you panic? Do you start rambling? Do you stare and just not answer? Or do you just kind of take a deep breath? I'm like, I haven't thought of that. And then throw something, because there's no right or wrong answer other than rambling too fast or saying nothing.
Did you do this? Did you apply for a job?
So I've done that from the time I was little. I've done that all the time. It was early on because again, I always felt that I had confidence in myself, but you're not always right. But one of the things is, you got to be yourself, right? So if I'm as outgoing as I am and stuff like that, if somebody says, well, tone it down a little bit, or we don't like that, it's like, well, then I probably don't want to work for you. Mm-hmm. But when you talk a lot and you're proactive, sometimes in the job situation, like, well, this guy, we can't control him, he can't talk. And one of the things now, as I've interviewed for jobs the last few months, is I said to some people, I'm 62 years old. If I walk in and my boss is 24 years old, I have no issue with that. So it's like you come in there and it's like, you're the boss, tell me how to work. What is it that you want to accomplish? And so it's one of the key things in networking comes back to being adaptable. What are you trying to accomplish? Well, if you're going there to make sales, that might not work. If you're going there to meet people, that probably has a better chance of working. And when you go, just ask people questions. And, sometimes people do that and they're like, they got pissed when I asked that question. I said, well, that's some subtleties that I can share with you after you come back and go, it didn't go as well as I wanted.
Yeah. Well, so what is kind of your format for when, say you're at a Friends of Pete
Yep.
style event where it's just people milling about?
Yeah.
What do you ask someone when you go up to them? What's your kind of game plan to start a conversation?
I literally do that and go, hey, and it's that simple. It's like eye contact, a smile, maybe a laugh, shake hands and say, hey, I'm Pete. And it's like, so, it's like, but the other thing I think I had said to you guys earlier is I'm a really, really big proponent of pride in yourself. And when people don't have pride in their self, then like have pride in your family. And so it's like pronouncing your name right and do this stuff. I talk to tons of international people, including international students, and people will Americanize their name to make it easier for somebody in where they are now to do it. I said, if you're cool being called that, that's fine. But if your name is something and it's hard for me to pronounce, tell me the name and correct me when I get it wrong. And so I think that's a big thing to do, is just come up and introduce yourself and say hi. And I've got this thing where every time I talk to people, I said, if you ever see me at an event, just come up and talk. If the three of us, not with microphones in front of us, but if the three of us are having coffee and somebody sees and recognizes one of us, come over and just say, excuse me, and introduce yourself. And I take that and share that all the time. And then people say, yeah, but you've been around for a while, or some older people are sitting in a room and you guys are intimidating. And so I take that same process and walk up to a bunch of people that are younger. I was saying earlier that I do these things, 1 million cups and 1 million opportunities at Northampton Community College. And so it's a community college. It's a lot of young people. It's a lot of people that are coming back into education, but they group themselves together. There's a nursing program. It's a bunch of young women. There's some great men doing that too, but a bunch of young women are talking, and I'll walk over to them and say, hey, I'm Pete. You kind of see, like, they'll giggle and they'll look at you, who cares? So it's like, just wanted to say hi, ladies. I see you here every week, and all that stuff. And so I take what I say in terms of being approachable and throw that into the same thing where I'll walk over and say hi. And then if somebody doesn't like that, you're not, again, because you're not trying to intimidate or interrupt somebody. But if you don't say something, you can't start a relationship. So
do you have a conversation exit strategy? I feel like something that often happens is we're talking and then smiling and nodding and then nothing's coming out.
So that's a great question that I get all the time about when people are just asking about what not to do in networking, how to extract yourself from somebody, because there's a key thing in terms of making use of your time, right? And so I told you, I have these Friends of Pete events, but I go to a bunch of other networking events. And one of the strategies that I always employed, somebody said, well, I can get away with it, is I walk in the front door, not loudly, but loudly enough, visibly enough, say hi to the host. I always think, whether it's somebody running an event or the venue host, saying hi to them if I know them or don't, and then I kind of make a quick loop of the room and say hi to people and everything, and then leave. And I'll do that sometimes at like a big, a luncheon or some event. And I might be in and out in 10 minutes. But the next day, if you're, I saw you at the event, I didn't get a chance to talk to you. Meanwhile, the shyer person, the person who doesn't know how to network, will come in, grab their seat at the table, sit with their three colleagues and talk. And they're like, God, we've been here for 2.5 hours and I can't wait to leave. And the only people they talked to was their colleagues who they could go back to the office and talk to as well. So I said, you've got to be able to walk around a little bit, make a long loop to your table if you're sitting somewhere. Don't settle for, pushing yourself too far out to the side. Be shy and be by yourself, but be close to the door, or be close to where they're making the food, so people at least have to see you or acknowledge you. So that's one of the things that I always say. But the extracting yourself from a conversation is something that I was always good at, and it comes up with asking you a ton of questions. And it's not trying to blow anybody off. But when you start talking and then you're saying, and here's who I want to meet, I'm like, look, we can talk later. That lady over there is somebody you want to meet, or based on what you told me. And so it's always that thing. It's a way that I say people that are new or nervous about networking, bring a friend, because it's like going to a party. You can peel off. If you like this person and you want to get rid of this, throw your friend and talk to their friend. And it works, because again, sometimes like, thank goodness you got rid of me. And sometimes like, oh my gosh, I found my great synergy meeting somebody else. So that's one of the strategies that I do, is not throw somebody away. I said to you too earlier, my close friends don't come to Friends of Pete. My closest friends, I should say, because it's a whole bunch of close friends, but because I don't talk to them. But my personal strategy, and it's not a strategy, but just my life is, if I'm talking to you, I'm talking to you. I'm not looking at my phone. I'm not looking over your head. I'm talking to you. And if somebody gets a little long-winded, I sort of, I can sort of cut them off, or again, say you should talk to this person. But I think that's a strategy that people can embrace that are not comfortable doing that.
Do you like to get a business card from everybody you talk to and follow up with them, or just focus on, oh, this person, I could help them, or they might be a connection?
So that's a really interesting question as well when it comes to networking. Is some groups will say, make sure you bring your business cards. Others will say, don't show up and just give your business cards. And so there's a balance. And again, currently, one of the funny things for me now is, having been out of work for 6 months, is I don't have a card. And people are like, well, hey, idiot, get a friend to make up that says Pete Reinke, Friends of Pete, with your contact information. But I don't do that. I ask for your card. And if somebody forgot it, and again, somebody who's growing their business or growing their network, I do sort of chide them for that. Like, you gotta how do I not, how do I get in touch with you? And what we've done now is to take that strategy, is to get out there, and so many networking groups, they have you do the 30-second introduction. It's a commercial, and people are nervous about doing that. But you got to be able to say who you are and what you do. And as I said to you guys a couple times, like, it's got to be first and last name and company. You just say, hey, I'm Pete. What? I don't like. There's a lot of Pete's out there, so have a little bit of something out there. But I do think it's a business card is good. In smaller networking events these days, and smaller I define as, 15 or 20 up to 30 or 40 people. There's been a really good strategy that people do where they say, bring in your cards, bring 20 cards, and they'll have a table in the corner and put your card there. And so then when you leave, you're not asking everybody you talk to for a card. You're like, oh, I met that person. They seem nice. And you can pluck a couple cards off there. So that's a strategy that I think people should embrace. I think that would be a good thing to do.
So as somebody who does a lot of networking, what are your thoughts on real business cards versus digital business cards?
So I'm funny because even though I'm maxed out at LinkedIn, I think digital cards are good for people. I don't do that. And it's a little bit of something else in anything you do, is you have to have your preferred way of doing it. How do you input things to keep it? But if somebody doesn't do that, you have to be flexible. I have a friend that does a lot of the digital business card stuff. And if somebody has a card, it's like, I don't take that. It's like, well, take it anyway. Put it in your bag. But it's like, so you have to be sort of welcoming and coming. I think the digital business card works because right away you can input it into your LinkedIn and into your CRM or whatever. I think that just saves time, because so many of these things is you don't want to have to do things, a ton of different times, or remember somebody. Once you plug it in there, however you remember is the best way to do it. Each person should follow up the way it works for them, unless they work for somebody where the boss says you need to do this, and then you need to adapt. So that's a very good question.
Do you think the style and design of a business card makes any impact? Someone who's probably seen millions of them.
I mean, I don't. In my sort of home office, I'm no exaggeration, you guys, I must have 15,000 cards, and they're all over the place. And you have people that have super colorful ones, or thickly laminated, or a unique size. I think they're quirky. I think they're interesting. I'll remember you the first time that I saw you, if you're sort of across the room. I'm like, oh, that's the guy with a quirky card. After that, for me personally, I get to know you. So like, don't remember what your card looks like. People often ask me, how do we first meet? It's like, I have no idea, most people, but I know that I enjoy talking to you, and that we're actually friends now and stuff like that. But when somebody says, oh, you first did this, like, oh, that's awesome. Whatever impact works for you. So I think the best thing to do with networking.
It seems like, too, a big part of your strategy is you never go out looking for leads or anything. You're always, how can I help you? How can I help? Is that a strategy you encourage other people to do, is connect with people who make sense with your business and what you're doing in life, but find people that you can offer some kind of referral or help to? Yeah.
I mean, I always feel that I'm confident. The one thing that I'll plead guilty to be like, being arrogant about stuff, is that there's almost nobody that I meet that I don't think I can help in some way. So that's kind of my mindset, is like, I can help, connect you to somebody, but it's always like, how are you making these connections? And I had a really good I have a lot of friends who are business coaches, right? And I think it was my friend Mo El Husseini who put it together, right? Yeah. And Mo had this really great thing where we did a big speed networking thing at Penn State Lehigh Valley, and he had a slide about how to convert networking and connections into clients. And his thing was the first time you meet somebody, it's like it's a 3% conversion rate. And the second time it grows to 5, and and it was like all of a sudden you get to the 8th connection, the 8th time that you've interacted, and all of a sudden like 70% of the business you get will be the 8th time that you meet. And so that's a strategy that you say go in there, and it's like it's almost. And again, I've said to you about sports and stuff like that. I always say it's like being in a tennis tournament or something where you want to win the tournament. But most tennis tournaments start out with 64 people or 128 people, whether it's the pros or whether it's some local thing. And the whole mindset, and it goes back to my basketball and soccer days, was survive and advance. All you can play badly and be done the first time, and then nobody remembers you were the best player because you're gone. Just get through, and then you fine tune your skills. And the second time, and then you get somewhere where either you win or somebody's better than you. And I think that's the whole thing with networking is sometimes people do it for friendships, but they usually do it for business. And if you can get to the very end and win the business, it's great. If you get to the very end and the person you're competing with who's been doing it for longer than you or has something unique that they do or their price structure is lower and you lose then, it's like, but now they know. They know your names, they know Jeff Cinema, they get all this stuff, and then you're in the mix. And that's the key thing to do. Yeah, so it's more you lose opportunities early on than you win it. And again, if you win it the first time, God bless you. But maybe somebody needs something immediately, and that's I think that's another thing, guys, that I think is really important is you need to be prepared that if the person you're talking to veers into the connection, it's like, hey, I need your services now, to not say, hey, well, wait, I wait till the 5th or 6th conversation to gain your business. You need to be able to pivot and say, well, if you need this, I've got it. So that's a question I think is very important.
So who are you looking to meet when you go out networking? Like how could we help you?
I mean, I'm my thing is I look to meet people that I don't know. And so I've been around for a long time. Like I said, I've been doing what I've been doing with networking in the Lehigh Valley for 35 years. So if I don't know you, it's usually either you're new or you've kept a really low profile, because I try to keep a high profile and be out and about. But to answer that question, it's been interesting because the last few years I don't go out in the evenings. I do my Friends of Pete happy hour once a month that I'm out till 7. Every other day I'm at my house, in my yard with my wife, 4:30, 5 o'clock every day. And so people that are out networking and connecting who have a day job, they're in a manufacturer, they own a store, and they can't get away, I might not see them very much. But I still monitor that. And again, I know people do this. Look at people's online presence. When you're driving around, look at things that are going on. And then when I hear somebody is doing something, I like to meet them. But I think all things being equal, my favorite thing is meeting people who feel they are nothing and have nothing. The person who's been incarcerated, the person who's overcome addiction, so many people that have come in there not just first generation college, first generation high school. And it's like, and they might have something in their mind, but they don't know how to articulate it, they don't know how to be. It's like, I will take you under my wing and be a friend, a mentor for you for the next 40 years if you want. Or sometimes it's like, I just wanted to meet Matt, then you're done. I don't need you anymore, Pete. And I've done that sometimes where it's like making those connections and then passing it off. So that's something I think is important. But for me, it's just like meeting somebody that I don't know, that works for me.
So what is your strategies with following up with people after, say you went to an event and you did your quick pass through? Do you like to just send everybody a quick email, try to get a lunch with them? Like what's your follow-up?
So that's another question again. And let's say I'm totally unique this way, but I have my way of doing things. And that is, I always ask people for their cell phone. And the vast, vast majority give it to me. Again, I'm not selling it to anybody. I'm not sharing it with anybody else unless you're okay with that. One of the fun things for me is that people, every day I'll get half a dozen inquiries from somebody say, do you mind if I share your information, your email or your phone with somebody else? Or do you mind? It's like, you don't have to ask me, just share it. in return, I do ask, unless you say, Pete, you don't need to ask, and then I'll just do it. But my way of doing outreach is, again, and I think, and you'll both see it now, but I send out, we post Friends of Pete events and 1 million cups and 1 million opportunities. We post it now on Seth Rubin's network, Lehigh Valley, but you post it on LinkedIn and Facebook and other groups. But what I do is we do graphics for my Friends of Pete every month. And ideally, I'll loop in the Lunch and Learn and the happy hour in the same graphic. And then I text it. And I'm the most obsessive texter, I think, on earth. I'll send each month 400, 500 texts. And somebody said, well, how long does that take? I said, I don't know, 20 hours? I said, well, why don't you just use this program? I said, because how I do it is I don't cook or bake. So when my Mary's cooking or baking or we're watching a game, I'll go through a list. And I'll just sit there and say, again, like the close buddies. And then you think, who was at an event yesterday? Who did I meet this past week, or who am I meeting next week? That's who I start with. And I have tried, and I think for the last 3 years, if you have sent me a text or have called me in the last month, I will guarantee you that the upcoming month's Friends of Pete notice you will get. If you haven't, I'll get to you when I think of you or thinking stuff like that. And so it keeps me in front of people. I have numerous people who, because of business, because of family, because of health, sometimes because of interest, don't make my events, but they get it all the time. And so it's that repetitive thing where, and by not having a formula where I just send a mass thing out to 500 people, when I send it to you, I'm thinking about you for 5 seconds without thinking about your name, and I'm going through these things. And so that's how I work. But again, I'll always follow up. I was sharing with you the 1 million opportunities for job seekers. So that was this morning. It's the first time in months that I missed it coming down to see you guys. But I called in, and everybody that's there, the job seekers who I think very urgently, again, need to find employment to provide for themselves and their families, they're at the top of my list in terms of sharing. This is what's coming up. This is what's coming up. So that's how I do it. I think it's a good way to do that is to reach out to people. And I had somebody the other day, a good friend, who said, if I call this guy and he doesn't respond, I forget about him. I was never a baseball player, but I'm a 3 strikes and out person. First time I sent you something, maybe you didn't get through. Second time, maybe you're on vacation. If it's the third time, then I kind of drop you to the bottom of the list. But it's constantly trying to be in front of somebody. I think that's a really key thing to do, is just make sure that they don't forget who you are.
So why do you think, why do you think that networking is so important? Like, if you were to summarize the importance of making connections with people in business and in life.
I mean, to me, it's almost like, asking like, how can you breathe without oxygen or without air? It's like, it's innately is how it works. But I'll answer that question by sharing something that I tend to do a lot with the colleges and universities. Like I said, one of the cool things, and Philadelphia suburbs, Philadelphia city stuff I love as well, but we have 11 colleges and universities in the Lehigh Valley, and it's state schools, it's community colleges, it's private schools. And when I meet with groups of kids, and I always ask this question, and this is an answer to what you're saying, what you're asking me now, is I say to them, if you had to stereotype the student body or your class by groups, tell me what they are. And some kids are like, I don't know. It's like, no, I mean, it's like, you mean like engineers and athletes and artists and commuters? It's like, good, we're on to it. And so you come up with those things. And if, let's say you took 10 groups, nobody's part of more than 4 or 5 of them themselves. So you hit off those things. And then he said, well, how about the groups that you're not involved with? Who do you know? And the story that I always use is like, it's the young international woman who's at Lafayette or Lehigh as an engineer. And then there's the football player at that same college. And they feel like they have nothing in common. And so the young engineers are like, I'm intimidated by those guys. And like, why? And then the football players are like, why would we know these people? I'd say, because to get ahead in life, to get customers or all these things, if you just go to your closest friends, eventually you run out of new clients. And somebody said, how about if it, you think about like, families and stuff like that. It's like, you can't, marry your family, right? I mean, people have, and then it goes awry, right? So the point is, and so what I come up with, that analogy was the fact that you need to, if you're going to be successful, not in business, but I think in life, it's like you need to know people from all 10 of those groups. And when you're the person where these young engineers are like, I know the one football player that I can call that'll help me. When you're that person, that a group of people that you look like you have nothing in common with calls you and says, I know Pete will take care of me, he'll help. And I have that all the time. I feel I'm part of all these different groups. Somebody said, how are your groups? And I'll give you one quick analogy is our Greater Lehigh Valley Chamber of Commerce does a fantastic job. It's like the 7th or 8th biggest chamber in the whole country, not of small, mid-sized communities like it compares to New York and San Francisco. And Tony Iannelli, that's been running it, he and his team are fantastic. They help the community, period. But years ago, they did these things about connecting, having different regional subchambers. And then they did the great idea of finding almost every category of you as a human being. Sex, sexual preference, age, are you a veteran, all these things. And they created councils for them. And it was really good to get to know people who look like you or have a background like you. And they've done great with that. The Friends of Pete and the Pete Reinke model is that you walk into a room and everybody's there. People ask me all the time, like, how do you get the black people to talk to the white people and the gay people to talk to the straight people? Like, I'm not following it. And the older people to talk to the young people. It's like, well, like, I see these guys all the time, and like, that guy's like a 50-year-old white man, and that's a 30-year-old black woman, and it's like, well, they're friends. Like, well, how are they? Like, you mean they're coworkers, they're neighbors? That's his daughter-in-law? It's like, no. And people, when they have those strong relationships, so many of those people over the decades, like, when I first met that guy that looks like I have nothing in common with, it's like, it was you. And you told him to go talk to him about something. And it turns out we both like jazz. We both like bird watching, something that was obscure, but drives their engagement. And then as long as they're comfortable, then I'll leave them alone.
So for someone who's maybe they're looking for a job or just trying to grow their business relationships, how does someone get started in the networking game?
As I said, it's just putting yourself out there. But the first and foremost thing I always say, which I think the older, signs of aging and stuff like that frustrates me a little, is being curious and asking questions, right? And I said, so much of what I'm doing going forward with making this Friends of Pete referral thing is one of the quirks that I have is you can't tell me, introduce me to other small businesses or manufacturers or law. You got to give me a couple of names. And then once you give me names, then I'll go through my mind and through my database and say, oh, here's some different people. And so much of it start out with who is it that you want to be in front of? And it just takes a little bit. It's a Google search. It's going for a walk. It's driving through a thing. It's going to places down here and up by me that, a guide that is Philadelphia Business Journal, the list of manufacturers. Start with that. And then ask and say you want to meet them, because the key thing that I was saying, and this is something else going forward when I'm talking about my Friends of Pete business running events, is you have to know who to reach out to. But if you don't know, like, I don't know who to ask for, you look it up and then you ask somebody, tell me who's in this industry or that industry. And so that's the key thing, is because you have to find a way to get paid. Unless you're independently wealthy, you need to get paid. And so it's like, you need to ask, you need to find out who fits the description of a client for what I do. And then once you do that, whenever I meet people and ask them to introduce themselves, like, what do you do? And and then the other key thing that I should touch on that's extraordinarily important is I always ask people in the first half dozen questions is, who's your competition? And I told somebody a couple of years ago, I asked a person who was a lawyer, and they said, I have no competition. Like, you invented the law profession? Like, that's unbelievable. Like, what's your name? Like, I want to know you. You're going to be famous. And the point was, you can say this person's too pricey, person's too lazy, whatever. You can have any excuse about your competition, but knowing who your competition is, especially if they're good at it, just allows you to run a business. And I think that's very important. And then when you find somebody, and again, I tell this funny story. Again, everything, as you guys can tell, is a story with me. But when I was first back in the commercial real estate brokerage business in the late 90s, I was so excited about being out and about. And I called on this company, and this guy met with me, and I'm like, this is great. I'm going to get this big piece of real estate business. Because again, it was commercial, not residential. And the guy said to me, Pete, really nice to meet you. You might not know, but my brother-in-law is one of your competitors. And so I appreciate the outreach, and nice to meet you. And he's kind of like I am. Like, he wanted to meet, so we hit it off. But you're never going to get my business. And I said, okay. And this is this actually happened, guys. And I said, what if he cheats on your sister? And the guy literally said, I'd bleep and kill him, and then I would never work with him again. I said, so I happen to know your brother-in-law, and I like him as a person, and he's good at the job. But if they ever go their separate ways, I'd like to do your business, handle your business. And the guy burst out laughing. 2 or 3 weeks later, I get a call from a guy, and he says, hey, Pete, I'd like you to help me find a new property for my business. I said, absolutely. Where did you get that lead? And it was from this guy. And he said, Pete, you made me laugh, but you also made a point. And he said, this isn't a huge piece of business. I am still going to give that one to my brother-in-law, but I am going to give you a piece of business because you put it out there and we're so blunt. And so that's another thing that I would share with you guys about networking is being honest, but being blunt, not doing it a rude way or a pushy way or a nasty way. But, it's always the other analogy for networking that goes back to my sports days is like, shoot your shot. I'll see you next time. Are you sure? Just ask. And then if somebody takes it the wrong way or if you get tongue-tied, do better next time. Sometimes somebody takes their shot and the person is so rude or abrasive that you asked that they almost are traumatized and they come back and they say, well, now you realize what a jerk that guy is. Mm-hmm. And you probably don't want to do business with them. But it's not me telling you. It's you seeing it for yourself. So those are some of the, I don't say lessons, but those are things that I think really can make an impact. And the stuff that I'm sharing, I do think almost anybody can do it. You have to be true to yourself, but it's like, just put yourself out there and then ask, and then don't worry about when it doesn't work.
Well, that's a happier end to the story than I thought you were going to go. I thought the sister was going to get cheated on. Glad to hear she's all right.
Yeah, she's now married to my brother. Yeah. She's now my sister-in-law. No, that's funny.
So I'm guessing you have in the next couple months some events. If people want to dip their toes in the water networking at Friends of Pete, how do they?
Yeah. So again, and it's always the shameless plug-in. So you can't promote yourself if you don't do it. But it's like if you're okay with doing it. So my phone number is 610-442-9398. And my email address is my initials, so it's PHRJR, the number 1 at Gmail. And so people can reach out to me. They can, search, email me. They can search me on LinkedIn because I'll follow you even if I don't connect. But we have some events coming up for Friends of Pete. This Thursday, the 24th, we're having a happy hour from 4 to 7 at Vault Brewing, which I believe is in, I don't know if they're from Newtown, somewhere in Bucks County. They've opened up an office, a location in downtown Easton, which is great. So that's a fun thing to do. Next week, the 29th, and again, I'm always lousy with days. I don't know if is that a Tuesday?
I don't know. We can check.
I think it's Tuesday, Wednesday. I don't know. I think it's a Tuesday. That's a
Tuesday.
The Lunch and Learn is really cool. That's at my friend Virginia Ellen and her mom's Hawaii Fluid Art in Allentown, where people you actually can make art. They've got a retail store, so they're doing that. And then I don't know if you guys have ever gone to Music Fest up in Bethlehem. It's a really cool summer festival that they do for music.
I was out shooting something while it was going on.
It's a 10-day music festival that we've had for about 35 years. It's awesome in downtown Bethlehem. And we have an annual tradition there that on Thursday, August 7th, our happy hour is, Friends of Pete happy hour, is at the Sun Inn, which is a historic inn whose board I happen to be on. And so that's a really fun thing. So those are the next 3 Friends of Pete things. And then since I'm talking about things that are coming up, it's like every single Monday morning, 9:30 to 11, is this 1 million opportunities in South Bethlehem at the Fowler Center at the community college. And then every single Wednesday from 9 to 10 is 1 million cups. You guys can zoom in from here, but that's this entrepreneur group. That is the best thing that happens in the Lehigh Valley on a weekly basis, because the bottom line to me always was that we are inclusive, supportive, and bring people involved to all these things. So those are great events. And as I said, the key thing to that question is Network Lehigh Valley that Seth Rubin's put together. That's a way that people can to plan their way to come in. Something that's really flattering to me is that people that are in Philadelphia, South Jersey, and around other parts of the country really will plan their client trips to Lehigh Valley around some of these events that I'm talking about. So it's nice to do that. And that's how you can find me and find what's coming up.
Perfect. Well, thanks again for coming on, sharing the knowledge, and yeah, we'll see you at Friends of Pete soon.
Sounds good. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Pete.
Stories from the Top is your guide to successful business development. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts or find Edge of Cinema on YouTube. Stories from the Top is an Edge of Cinema production, hosted by Matthew Skura and Jeremy Schmidt. To learn more or get in touch, visit edgeofcinema.com/podcast.